At some point during the class, probably around break time, I'll share it with you, right? Well, I haven't put it up yet. So, okay, here it is now, in case anybody wants to screenshot it quickly. But I will bring it up again right around break time, and we can go over it then. Yeah, so I think what the student was saying is lights, camera, action, because it was 11:35. Very clever. Okay, so let's go to our presentation. Excuse me, right. So as I was saying before I started recording, so I'll say it again. We want to do West Indies, USA today. And we want to go back to South to talk over the main messages from South. And then at the same time, discuss the main messages from West Indies, USA. So both poems, the most obvious connection will be place. Both poems are talking about place. But I'm sure you all will find other connections as well. Things that we could compare them and contrast them with, right? All right, so let's start by discussing the title. So the title is, as you can see, West Indies, comma, USA. Any particular reason you think that the poet would have written it like that? What do you think he's trying to say when he writes West Indies, comma, USA? All right, so one student says maybe a place in the US or a team in the US, okay. West Indies, then USA, all right. Think along the lines of a place in the US. Think of how we write, so look at this next slide, right? I've written some examples of addresses here. I'll make it bigger. All right, so this is just for discussion purposes right now. You don't need to write anything down per se, right? Other than just the title of the poem we're going to study. All right, so let's go along the lines of places and addresses. So think of the title as an address. So if you look at these addresses, right? Like this one is the address for actually Disneyland or Disney World, one of them. I can't tell the difference. And they have Orlando, which is the city, and then they put the state, which is Florida, FL, and then they have a zip code, right? Or here's this is the address for the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, DC, comma, USA, right? And then we have the title West Indies, comma, USA. And then it just occurred to me, we could do a much more obvious example. If I'm writing my address, it's not my address, right? It's a made-up address. If I write 25 Southern Main Road, but I'm writing SMR for the sake of time, Cunupia. And then I want to put, I need to tell people that I'm writing from Trinidad because I'm mailing it abroad. So I have to put comma Trinidad, right? So when we write addresses, the last thing we put is the country that the place is in, or if not the country, then we put the city that the street is in or something, right? So I want you to think along the lines that the poet is suggesting that in this poem, either he sees or people see the West Indies as being inside of the United States. And he might be okay with that, or he might be criticizing that. We'll see it when we read the poem, right? Yes, okay, so that brings up other questions like Kimberly is saying that maybe the West Indies don't have their own identity. It shows the US influence on the Caribbean. All right, now is there parts of the Caribbean that actually does belong to the US? There must be some geography students in here. Is there parts of the Caribbean that the US has sort of ownership of, like it's considered a territory of the US? What parts, which islands in the Caribbean are those? Right, so there are some US Virgin Islands, right? Okay, that is important. So the title suggests, so we could note this under your heading, right? That the West Indies is part of the USA, right? As in a territory within the USA. Okay. Somebody got it. So we have two. We have US Virgin Islands, and there are also British Virgin Islands, but there's a US Virgin Islands, and then there's Puerto Rico. Right. Puerto Rico is an associated state of the United States, right? So this might be useful for you to have in your head later on. So yes, you could write down the stuff that I am writing, right? By the title. So the title suggests that the West Indies is part of the USA. It brings to mind so the US Virgin Islands. So this is a bullet point under that main bullet point, right? So the US Virgin Islands. Also Puerto Rico. Right? Also the idea that the US may have influenced the West Indies conception of itself. So the idea that the West Indies does not have an identity on its own. So I'm writing WI for short, right? Now, I'm not saying the poet is saying that. I'm just saying he makes us think of that. So either we try to copy the US, or we try to absorb their culture and give that back, or something along those lines, right? So poems work by what the richness of a poem comes from what it could make you think about. It makes you think about a lot of things by saying just a few words. It suggests things to you, right? All right, so these points that I have on the PowerPoint that I've written down, you could make a note of, right? Most likely you've already started doing that because it might be useful later on. Okay, so I'm counting to, well, I'm giving us 1 more minute. I'm timing 1 more minute, and then I have to change the slide, right? All right, last 10 seconds, so screenshot if you need to. Right, so I'm clearing this and we're moving on, right? All right, next thing we want to talk about is what are the main devices we want to look at in this poem, right? So our heading is devices in the poem, even though it's on the bottom. That's our heading, right? Devices in the poem. And now those of you who've done this poem in school before, what devices do you remember from the poem? I'm going to put the main ones over here, And then I'll put the ones that we may not focus on today, but they're there on the right-hand side. What devices do you remember from this poem? Okay, so I think, Vishan, what you mean is allusion, right? So this is a brief reference, right? So if you already know these, then you do not need to write them down again. But if, for example, allusion is one that sometimes gives students trouble, is if the definition you don't remember, then you need to write it down, right? Yeah, so we'll see the poem just now. But for those, I know some of y'all have done it in school already. So I'm just asking, what do y'all remember? All right, so allusion is one. That's the main one we want to look at. Contrast, right? So highlighting differences. That's what contrast is, right? There is simile. So by now y'all are probably tired of seeing the definition of simile. I hope so. Simile, comparing two things. With, like, or as, right? So these are the ones rather that we will focus on for the poem, as in the ones that I will want you to know examples of for an essay and so on. But others, as you all are pointing out, there's sarcasm. There is also pun, right? What else is there? Okay, someone is saying personification. I'm writing it down. I can't remember an example of it right now, but I will take your word for it. So I hope we're not just calling a device, right? A couple of people are saying it's personification. All right, so 1 minute again, copy down any definition that you need to. And then we will continue. Next slide, right? 1 minute. Okay, last 5 seconds, and I'm clearing the screen. Okay, so let's get started. So our first, now I've broken up the poem into sections for us to make sense of what it's saying, right? So we're gonna go through the whole poem and discuss what the speaker means, well, by the poem, right? All right, so the poem starts. Cruising at 30,000 feet above the endless green, the island seems like dice tossed on a casino's base, right? Okay, so guys, this is our last class, right, for summer. And so we have to finish up this poem and go back to South. So I have to move a little faster. So if there isn't something, so you need to listen for the cue when I'm about to change the slide. I will give you at least 10 seconds to screenshot it, right? A reminder. And if you miss that time, then you'll have to either maybe during the break we'll have time, or you'll come back to the recording, right? But we have to move a little faster to finish up what we have to do. So sorry about that. But just to prepare you. Okay, so let's start again. Cruising at 30,000 feet above the endless green, the island seems like dice tossed on a casino space. So I think this should be islands, actually. The islands, right? Right, seem like dice tossed on a casino space. Okay, so what is the person doing? Well, when he says cruising at 30,000 feet, we get the idea he's in a plane. And then when he says above the endless green, you have a picture here of an ocean. Ignore, this is the only picture I could find that was without royalties to use. So ignore the Dominican Republic highlighted on the flag. That's not relevant for the poem. But the idea of the Caribbean is relevant for the poem. So we don't care about it, right? Notice the water is kind of blue, but in some pictures you might notice the water is blue-green. So he's saying the endless green, right? And he's highlighting green because he wants to compare it to this thing on the right. This is the casino's bays, B-I-Z-E. It's a very unfamiliar word. This poem is the only place I have ever seen the word, actually. I've never come across it. Even though you've seen the thing on TV, maybe in real life, some of the adults in the class. The base is this green, the green of the table that you will see in a casino. And well, people throw dice because they're placing bets and making wagers. So when the dice is thrown, we don't know where it's going to land. And it looks as though somebody just pelted the islands on the map, is what he's saying. They are not in neat, orderly rows. They are just kind of thrown haphazardly. According to him, that's how he's interpreting the image. Thanks, Nikki. Nikki is pointing out it's a volcanic arc. Right. So what does that mean? There is order or there isn't order, or there can't be order, or they are thrown. Oh, it's ordered, but in a kind of an arc. Okay. He wants to highlight that there's chaos in the Caribbean. So he is describing it like dice tossed on a casino's base, right? Okay, so we need to, if we're writing a little summary of what the poem says so far, we know that the speaker is in a plane, right? So the speaker is in a plane, right? As it ascends, meaning going up into the sky, right? He sees the islands, the Caribbean islands. Right, and compares them to randomly thrown dice. Right? Okay, so see, let's make a note if we need to, if we don't have a summary anywhere. You can add this to your notes. I'm given 2 minutes because it's a short 2 sentences. And then we will continue, right? All right, in the meantime, if you are done, see what devices you could find in these 2 lines. Already there are some. Okay, good. So a lot of us are seeing simile. The islands are compared to dice thrown in a casino to show that they are in a random order. Right. So their wealth is random as well. Yeah, which we'll see in a little bit. So it's not just that how they land up in the ocean is random to him, but also the situation. So, you know, one country, he doesn't say this, but I'm just giving a real life breakdown of it. So like one country has oil, another one has nice beaches, some have good soil to plant, different situations, right? Most likely the endless green is the sea, right? While islands could be described as green in terms of their foliage, because he's so high up and he describes it as endless, it's not the islands he's probably focusing on, but the sea. All right, so we've had 2.5 minutes. I'm counting to 10, and then I need to clear the screen and change the slide, right? Okay, so we're continuing. Next piece of the puzzle. Some come up lucky, others not. Because when you throw the dice, sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. Puerto Rico takes the pot. So pot is jackpot, like a lotto jackpot, right? So here's our picture for that, right? The Dallas of the West Indies. So what are our associations with the word Dallas? The TV show, anybody watches the TV show Dallas or used to watch the TV show Dallas? Yeah, a rich city in America. Again, before the poem, I had no idea that Dallas was a rich city in America. When we think of rich cities, where do we think of? Maybe we think of New York. Maybe we think of Rhode Island. Maybe we think of places in California, Los Angeles. I don't know. But Dallas is one of them too, right? So Dallas is meant to make us think of a bright, shiny, wealthy place, right? So this is actually a screenshot of the cityscape in Dallas. In Texas, right? Oh, some people think of Atlanta. Okay, yeah. All right. All right. Silver linings on the clouds as we descend are hallmarked. Now, when we think of Hallmark, we probably think of the card store. But Hallmark is actually an old-fashioned word. It was like a brand or a mark that people would put on, that people who make high quality items, like say silver items that you use in the kitchen, or but this belt, for example, you see the pattern on it. A hallmark is like a specific mark that the maker of the item would put on the objects that they make, right? So silver linings on the cloud as we descend are hallmark. So what he's saying is that it's such a positive place, because you know the expression, every cloud has a silver lining, right? So Puerto Rico is such a lucky place, excuse me, so that even the clouds are marked by the people who created Puerto Rico, which, I mean, it is historically Spain, but he wants us to think of the US, which he's getting to. San Juan glitters like a Mavericks gold ring. Now, San Juan is where? Don't tell me by Barataria. Which San Juan is he talking about? No, not Puerto, Spain. What is wrong with you? All right. So San Juan is the capital of Puerto Rico, right? Where the airport is. Okay, well, it's where the airport is in Puerto Rico that we're supposed to think of, right? I'm wondering if I have this capital thing wrong. So we could put a asterisk by it, and if we care enough, we could check. But it's definitely where the airport is, right? All right, but he's saying the city glitters like a Mavericks gold ring. Yes, y'all could Google it and tell me. Now, I want us to understand the word maverick. if you all have watched, what's this movie that just came out with Tom Cruise? Right. Isn't he called Maverick in it? Isn't that like a name that they call him? Right, Top Gun, yes. Sorry, guys. I forgot. Okay. Okay, so a Maverick is somebody who stands out from the crowd. No, not Mobius. Okay, sorry. A Maverick is somebody who stands out from the crowd. Yes, an expert gambler, someone who takes risks. So you see this line of stormtroopers. You see this one guy here who's standing out from the crowd. So probably Finn in the recent Star Wars movies, right? He's the Maverick in the lineup, the one that's different. So Puerto Rico is the Maverick in the lineup of the islands, is what we're supposed to think of, right? And they're flashy. They have a gold ring. They're wealthy. They have a gold ring. So all of these little associations, these are all allusions. Look at how much he's managed to put in here. How many times he's managed to reference wealth and money without saying Puerto Rico is rich, and then saying Puerto Rico is rich again, and then saying Puerto Rico is rich. He put in jackpot, that's an allusion to money. He put in Dallas, that's an allusion to a rich city. He put in hallmarks, that's an allusion to luxury goods, right? He put in glitters and gold ring. So the speaker implies, so this is the note we're writing down now, right? The other stuff was just to make sure we understood the references. So the speaker implies that Puerto Rico has won a jackpot. Through its association with the USA, right? I need to move away this jackpot word here to just make some room to add to the note. Okay, so he sees Puerto Rico as glittering. So this is also important. I'm writing PR, short for Puerto Rico, right? As shiny and glittering. When think of, many of you would have been on planes coming back to Trinidad, right? So I'm timing 2 minutes while we talk about this for us to take down a note. If you come back early in the morning, well, probably at night is a better example. And it's dark outside, all the lights are on. Think of that view that you get. How does it look? After association with the USA. Oh, sorry, through its association with the USA. From the plane, it looks scary. It looks pretty. It's a bunch of shiny lights. It looks nice. Yes, it looks peaceful. It looks calm, colorful. Right. But those of us who live here know that sometimes it could be those things, but sometimes it could be chaotic, and sometimes it could be scary, and sometimes it could be lots of different things, right? So right now, as he's landing in the plane, when he looks at Puerto Rico, he's seeing it as shiny and glittering. And that's important because later on, when he's leaving, he's going to see different things, right? All right, so 1 more minute for the note. At any point, if anybody has questions, anything they didn't understand or need me to repeat, you could say, right? All right, I'm counting to 10. And then we're moving along, right? Okay, so I'm clearing these marks. Next piece of the puzzle. All right, all across the Caribbean, we collected terminals. So the terminal is where you stop at the airport, right? Airports are like calling cards. Do you all know what a calling card is? I was going to look for a picture to put here, but then I thought, nah, I didn't know. Okay, oh, some people do, some people don't. It's because it's now an old-fashioned device, like a business card, right? People don't really give these out anymore, right? But these are a bit like business cards. Some places still have them. Like if you go RK or you go, well, I say in RK, I'm not even sure if RK has it, but if you go into the business by the cashier, sometimes they'll have a little thing with a bunch of different cards. Okay, there, yeah. Okay, there are plenty of places with them. I guess because everything is online now, and then because we just went through a pandemic where we were trying to cut down on what we touched, calling cards are not really in style. Okay, or they have them in their bag, on their bags. Yeah, that's true. They staple them to the bags. All right, so no, RIK, the bookstore. I don't even know what RIK stands for. RIK. As in Sharon's, Nigel Arkan, RIK. Right. Anyway, all across the Caribbean, we collected terminals. Airports are like calling cards. So I suppose the different card represents a different, each different card represents a different business. The airport in some way tells people what the country is like. Cultural fingerprints. The handwritten signs at Port-au-Prince. Piaco's sleazy tourist art. You see how he describes the art at our airport? You see that? The sleazy to Piaco. Oh my, sorry about that, guys. I copied and pasted the poem from somewhere, and so I didn't proofread it. Let that be a lesson to you. Always proofread, right? The lethargic contempt of the baggage boys at is another Veribird in St. John's. And now for plush San Juan. All right, so let's see if we can figure out each of the pictures on the right and below is connected to one of the places he names, which is which. So the places he names are Port-au-Prince. As one. Where is that, by the way? Do you know? Some of you know. All right, Katie bookstore, guys. All right, that was just explaining about calling cards, and I was using them as an example. But please let RK is not important. We move on. You didn't miss anything interesting. Right. So we have, where is Port-au-Prince? Port-au-Prince is Haiti. Good. Right. So which of the pictures on the right is supposed to make us think of Haiti? And then Piaco is the next one. And then Veribird and St. John's, this is one place. And then lastly, San Juan. Right, so the top one is Haiti. This is actually an outline of Haiti. Remember, Haiti shares an island with Dominican Republic, right? So this one on top is Haiti. And when he says handwritten signs, what's he trying to tell us about Haiti? All right, so this is Haiti. Oops. Why say handwritten signs? If your sign is handwritten, that means you are, right, you don't have the funds to have a printed sign. What else could it mean? Maybe you don't have enough people coming into the airport to make it worthwhile to have printed signs. Maybe somebody stole your printed sign. I don't know, but it's not a good association, right? Handwritten signs at Port-au-Prince. Then Piaco, so here he means Trinidad, right? So this is Piaco. What does that tell us about Trinidad? What's he suggesting about Trinidad by calling it the art sleazy? What are we trying to do with the art at the airport? Well, is it good or bad? Is that a good description or a bad description? Bad is a bad description, right? Because sleazy means that we don't have any spine. We're just trying to please people. We are people pleasers. Clearly, he's never met a Trini. By the way, he's saying that he's suggesting that the art is there to pander to the tourists. Perhaps, I mean, that's the meaning I get from it. If you all have a different understanding, you could share it, right? All right, then he says, the lethargic contempt of the baggage boys at Variable in St. John's. So now, what does lethargic contempt mean? Lethargic means kind of tired, listless, slow, they have no energy, right? And contempt means scorn, right? Exhausted. So the people carrying the bags are slow and scornful of the people with the bags, right? So that's the attitude to the tourists or to the travelers. All right, now this here is a picture of Peace of St. John's. And St. John's is in the US Virgin Islands, is one of the US Virgin Islands, right? So a tourist destination. And now we come to San Juan. So this is a picture from San Juan, Puerto Rico, right? Yeah, they're both kind of pretty. It was honestly hard to find a picture of Puerto Rico online that showed wealth. It shows old-fashioned buildings. To me, it shows old-fashioned buildings, and it showed, but that's mostly it, right? Because the island was developed by Spain, so a lot of the architecture is Spanish-looking. All right. Anyway, so let's go back to what he is saying, right? He's saying that I'm talking about Puerto Rico. I think that, well, between these two places on the bottom, which one seems prettier? The one on the left or the one on the right? To you all. The one on the right? Well, the one on the right is a vacation destination. So yeah, they're both beautiful, but in different ways. The one on the left is somewhere I feel I would prefer to visit. It looks like there might be more to do. The one on the right is beaches and boats, and that's boring. To me, to you all, that might be more relaxing. I don't know. All right, so what is he saying? He's saying that throughout the Caribbean, so the plane passed through different airports. Which showed different qualities of various countries, right? A better word for showed might be highlighted. Contempt means scorn. Right? Now he hasn't come off the plane in these places, so this is like his general impressions he's talking about. So for example, the clearest one to remember might be the poverty of Haiti with its handwritten signs, right? Okay, now the plane has arrived in rich San Juan, Puerto Rico, or you could say luxurious, or you could still say plush. All right, now the plane has landed in wealthy Puerto Rico. Right now, that or what he thinks of as wealthy. How is it 12:17 already? What is going on? All right, so 2 minutes to note this. All right, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 more slides to get through for the rest of the poem, but we have one more longish slide like this one, and then the rest are short. I spelled highlighted wrong. Yes, I did. So you all could fix it. Thanks. I crossed my L. All right, so I'm timing 2 minutes. All right, we got some more than 2 minutes there, so I'm counting to 5, and we're clearing the screen and moving on, right? Okay. All right, so next one. All right. The pilots bland, you're safe in my hands. Drawl. Crackles as we land. US regulations demand all passengers not disembarking at San Juan stay on the plane. I repeat, stay on the plane. Subtle Uncle Sam, afraid too many desperate blacks might re-enslave this island of the free. Might re-enslave this island of the free, might jump the barbed electric fence around America's backyard, and claim that vaunted sanctuary. Give me your paw. Okay, so let's write what is happening first, and then we'll go through and look at the references. All right, so the pilot reminds everyone, reminds those continuing on, to stay seated, right? The speaker believes this is a sign of America's fear. That too many, well, he says Black people, but he means other minorities as well, probably, right? So too many non-white, too many minority, too many Black people might try to get into the US through Puerto Rico. Now, why would this be possible? I kind of said it at the beginning, but I didn't make it clear. Some of y'all will know because you've done the poem before, because you're geography students or history students. What is Puerto Rico's connection to the US? So this is our note, and then the other things we're going to go through and explain. But what is Puerto Rico's connection to the US? Anybody? So Puerto Rico, I'm putting this in a little space, a little separate space here. In a box by itself, right? Puerto Rico is an associated state. Right? So it's not exactly like how Florida is a state in the US or New York is a state in the US or California, but they have a special connection that other islands don't have. So people from Puerto Rico can travel to the US. They're still seen by many as outsiders though. They cannot vote in an election, right? But they do have a representative in the US government, but they have limited ability to do things, right? So they're an associated state of the US. They have a separate government, but it's a little bit as though they have they're a US territory, a little bit like that, not exactly like that, right? So if someone is from Puerto Rico, they can travel to the US. So if someone is in Puerto Rico, they could also, what the poem is suggesting is access the US much easier, right? So that's what this is saying. Now, let's talk about the references. So this is the next longish verse with a lot of references. So even though we're coming up on 12:30, I will just ask us to stay and finish on the poem before we take a break if we can, right? All right, so the pilot's bland, you're safe in my hands, droll, crackles as we land. So Uncle Sam. Here is Uncle Sam. You'll have seen this picture before, I'm sure, right? He's a cartoon, right, that was developed a long time ago to try to recruit soldiers to the American army. And he is known as Uncle Sam. And now the US is referred to as Uncle Sam, right? Yes, he's holding out he's pointing his index finger and he's saying, I want you. So some of y'all know the line, right? And it's him trying to recruit people to the army when the picture was created. But now the picture has come to be associated with the US. And we call the US Uncle Sam sometimes, right? But that is the when they say Uncle Sam, that is the picture that should come to mind. Yes, US stands for Uncle Sam, right? Right? So besides the little cartoon character, the caricature, it's also the country that the speaker is referencing, right? All right. Next thing, this line here. Well, okay, Island of the Free comes from the anthem, the US anthem. There's a line in there. The last two lines of the anthem, right? Land of the free and home of the brave. Right? When we're done with the note, I'll show you. I'll find it and show you, but it's not super important right now. It's just important to know that this is a play on the lines, land, well, the phrase land of the free from the national anthem, right? Now, then the next thing is give me your paw. This phrase, so you all know this picture here, this lady with the torch in her hand. Who's she again? The Statue of Liberty, right? So if you at the base of her, by her feet on the pillar that she stands, there's a plaque, and part of the plaque reads like what you see here: "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest, tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." So this is in reference to the fact that when the US was first starting out, it is a country founded on migrants. People migrated to the US, people from Poland, people from Italy, people from Greece, people from all over. And this statue is a gift from France to the US. So the code says, send me the people that you don't want, and I will give them a home, right? But that is no longer the message that is coming from the US. The message that the US sends out is, if you are not white, don't come here, according to the poem, right? So he is referencing that quote on the Statue of Liberty that's supposed to welcome migrants. And he's saying that the US is afraid people might get into Puerto Rico and then try to infiltrate the US, because Puerto Rico is the electric fence, right? And claim the sanctuary, the wanted sanctuary, meaning the promise of a place to stay, the promise of safety that is on the Statue of Liberty. Remember, this is one man's opinion. I'm not saying that we necessarily think like he does. We're just looking at the references that he's making in the poem. We're trying to understand those, right? Yes, so someone is talking about the promised land as the US, right? Yeah. A lot of people think of it that way. And the speaker is saying that it's not really promised. They only pretend to promise. All right, do we understand this? Anybody have any questions? Anybody need more time to write? Or can we go to the next slide? The rest of it is much shorter and less complicated. All right, so we're going, right? I'm clearing the screen and we're going. Remember, you'll come back to the recording if you need to, right? Okay, so we're done with Uncle Sam. Yes, a screenshot is very important. So if you're taking notes and you need more time. Okay, so now he looks out the window. Sorry, it's starting to rain on my end, so I'll try to speak louder. He looks out the window and he sees the cars and everybody unloading the bags with a fierce efficiency, right? So through the window, we change the color. So through the window on the plane, he sees bags being unloaded quickly and efficiently. And if you compare this to how he described the airports previously, you should see a contrast here, right? Right. Also, security is patrolling the patrol cars, right? To keep people from trying to enter illegally, right? Okay, so we're making a note of this. And you all might be thinking about how and why would somebody try to enter illegally? Well, people do that. Maybe not so much nowadays. Do you all remember a newspaper story about two Trinidadians who stowed away the wheel of a plane, the wheel well of a plane to get to, I'm not sure if it's Canada or the US. You all don't know this story? This was in the news a long time ago. This was like decades ago. All right. So I have 1 minute to add this note to our poem summary. And then we're continuing. 1 minute, right? All right, guys. I know that I said we would try to finish the poem before we take a break, but it's already 12:35. Y'all want to take a break now? All right. Okay. So I'm getting more yeses than nos, right? So let's say we take until 12:40 to finish writing on. You know, 12:45, we will start back, right? So we will take a break till 12:45. All right, so the plane is now going to start to climb again, right? And as he looks out, he is going to see a few different things that he didn't notice on the way down, right? So soon we're climbing, low above the pulsing city streets, galvanized shanties overseen by condominiums, polished Cadillacs shimmying past Rastas with push carts, right? So let's see. The plane starts to ascend again. So there's a person in the plane looking out the window, right? So the plane ascends once more. Right? As he looks out, let me fix this. He starts to notice things he didn't see before. So remember when the plane was coming down and he looked out at Puerto Rico, he saw a shiny, rich city, right? But now as he's looking, he sees shanties, right? Which are like slums, which are like areas of like poorly built housing, temporary housing. But above them, there are condominiums, so high apartment towers, right? So he starts to notice both poor and wealthy areas side by side, right? Right? He also sees luxury cars, on the road, passing push carts, right? So the Cadillac, an old-fashioned Cadillac is on the right-hand side. And at the bottom is a push cart. Now I couldn't find a picture of a Rasta with a push cart. So it's just somebody with a push cart. And then Bob Marley's head over him to give some dreadlocks to the person. Because I also couldn't find dreadlocks. But he specifically wants us to think of people of African descent in Puerto Rico, right? Which is a minority anyway, right? But it's important for us to think of this particular race dynamic. Well, for the understanding of the poem, that's what he's trying to highlight. Right? So pushcart, this is just the person with a trolley. We see people with pushcarts, like when you stop on the highway and people are selling water and they have like a blue barrel, that's like a pushcart as well, right? And well, Cadillacs no longer look like the old model on the screen, but that's the one I found. So they're much more modern looking nowadays. So the idea is just wealthy people are right next to people who are struggling, right? So you could see contrast in here. You could see imagery because you could get a picture of what the city looks like, but you could also see contrast in the city itself. The very wealthy and next to the very poor. This is a Cadillac. And if you Google Cadillac now, you'll see more modern examples of what the vehicle looks like. Okay, so I'm just giving us a minute to make the note. Okay, we can continue. All right, so let's clear the screen. I think we're on to the last piece now. Right, and as we climb, San Juan's fool's glitter calls to mind the shattered innards of a TV set that's fallen off the back of a lorry. All painted valves and circuits, the road like twisted wires. The bright cars, microchips. It's sharp and jagged and dangerous and belonged to someone else. So now he's comparing San Juan, and he's saying that what he thought was wealth, he calls it now fool's glitter. Right? So it's like it looks shiny on the outside, but it's not really gold. So what it really is like is if a TV were to fall off the back of a lorry, and then it was to break up and whatever, and then the inside, you would get these things on the inside would be broken. Yeah, the lorry is a truck or a van, like a pickup truck. The roads are like twisted wires, so here's some twisted wires to give you some imagery. And then the bright cars, the microchips. So here are some microchips, but not from a TV, from a phone, but you get the idea of microchips, right? What does this tell us about the city? It tells us that the roads are twisted up, confused, unplanned. It tells us that the cars are dangerous in a way, right? He's suggesting that the city is dangerous. So it's not some way, it's not some nice escape like he thought before. It's a place of danger, right? All right, so let's make a note of that, what is happening in this piece, right? So the speaker realizes, oops. Right, that the wealth of San Juan is an illusion. Yeah, so the reference of something falling off the back of a truck is, it does make you think of someone who steals something that falls off the back of a truck, right? Or someone who steals something and then they say it fell off the back of a truck. Have you all heard that expression before? The wealth of San Juan is an illusion. The city is broken and dangerous. Right? And that's probably because of the different contrasts within it, the wealth next to the poverty and so on. It also is not fully its own, because it says it belongs to someone else. Okay, I think we could probably add that. San Juan is not fully its own. All right, so I'm giving us a minute and then we'll continue. Okay, can we go ahead? All right, so I'm gonna clear the screen. Let's figure out what we need to say about the devices in the poem. So we'll start with allusion, right? And one of the main slides with allusion would be this one. This one. Well, okay, so there are allusions to the various airports in the Caribbean, right? That's one thing. Just a second. So we are just going to pick a few. We're going to pick 3, right? All right, so one is the poem alludes to the different airports in the Caribbean. So example, Puerto, in Haiti, right? And Piaco. So everybody should remember Piaco in Trinidad, right? To show that these places are different, right? Haiti is characterized by poverty, and Trinidad is characterized by, well, negatively, as somewhat sleazy, right? San Juan, Puerto Rico, is shown to be wealthy, right? Well, it's suggested, it's described as wealthy or plush. Okay, what's another place with allusion in the poem? Where were some other places we had to explain the references? What about here? So the speaker is alluding to the United States and its attitude to minority people, right? The fact that it is unwelcoming to minorities. When it talks about, when the poem references Uncle Sam being afraid that Black people might re-enslave Puerto Rico, and claim, and claim, ask for sanctuary or ask for a place to live when it says, give me your paw, right? So there are allusions to the United States, right? That's another thing. The poem contains allusions to the US when it mentions, so there's a few different things, right? Uncle Sam is one, as well as Island of the Free and Give Me Your Paw, right? So Island of the Free brings to mind the national anthem, the US national anthem, and Give Me Your Paw is a reference to the Statue of Liberty, right? And what are the allusions used to show? The allusions show that the US, now this is to the speaker, right? We don't mean that this is true about the US necessarily. It's just, this is true to the speaker, and we're just trying to decipher what he is saying. So the allusions show that the US is anxious to keep non-US and minorities out. Okay, so this is already a lot. So let me leave it at these two, as these two. What, anybody could think of any other allusions in the poem? If you think of any, you can put them in the chat. So 1 minute again to note the allusions, and then we want to talk about contrast and simile quickly. So you may need to screenshot it so we can move on, right? Because this may have turned out a little bit longer. When I type notes, I tend to put in more than if I handwrite. So sometimes I think it's better for classes if I handwrite, because that way we will have a better, you'll have a more reasonable quantity to write. If I type them, things get out of hand because I type faster than I handwrite. I guess everybody does. All right, anyway, 2 minutes and then we have to move. So you'll take a screenshot if you're not done, right? Yeah, okay, so Tanisha is pointing out that the stanza that had one of the earlier stanzas that had Puerto Rico is like a Mavericks gold ring, that one. Yes, that there are also allusions in there. The Dallas of the West Indies, all of those are also allusions. Sleazy means sort of like sneaky and dirty. Yeah, so and it means cannot be trusted, shifty, corrupt. Okay, well now it's being into sound like Trinidad. Yeah, all right. Sneaky, yeah. Okay, so we need to continue, right? I also want to talk about contrast in the poem. So this one, I have a blank slide here. I could write it in, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about contrast. Where is there contrast in the poem? Anybody could think of it? There are several different contrasts in the poem. All right, and we're looking at places where differences are highlighted. Okay, so one place is with the airports. Right? And this is mainly to show that Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico, is the wealthy one. Right? Now, if you are writing this in an essay, you need to give the evidence that we said above. So you would say, like, for example, you talk about the handwritten signs in Port-au-Prince, and they talk about the sleazy tourist art for Puerto. They talk about the lethargic contempt for Veribird, all the different ones, right? But for Puerto Rico, it's described as plush. Okay. Another place where we have contrast, anybody can think of it? Where else do we see differences? Okay, so in Puerto Rico itself, as the plane is going back up, there's the Cadillacs versus the push carts, and the condominiums versus the shanties, the poor versus the rich in Puerto Rico. So the poor and the rich in Puerto Rico. Right? So Cadillacs are next to push carts, or wealthy cars are next to street vendors, right? And condominiums, so high-rise buildings, are next to poorer neighborhoods or shanty towns. Condominiums. This is an M. Okay, now think about one more. Think about the speaker and his attitude to Puerto Rico. In what way does the poem show us a contrast in relation to that? Yes, the speaker's attitude changes. Right? At first, he sees it as wealthy. As lucky and wealthy. Right? Then he starts to see it as a place that the US is using. Okay, yeah. There's also a contrast between how the US portrays itself and how it actually is. So it portrays itself as a warm, friendly place to accept the poor, right? But in reality, it's trying to make sure that the people who are poor don't get in, right? All right. So at first he sees it as lucky and wealthy. Then he starts to see it as a means, the US is using it to keep poor people out. Right? So he sees it as a barbed electric fence, remember? And then he starts to see it as dangerous. By the end of the stanza, this becomes danger. Right? Like a broken TV set. So finally, he sees it as dangerous. All right, now we also need to talk about simile in the poem. Okay, so I think what will happen is we will discuss simile next. You will write out this thing on contrast. We'll discuss simile next and we'll wrap up there, right? So the pieces that we haven't done, I will make an additional video over the course of this week. And the same place that the summer recordings are posted, you'll be able to check it there, right? So we still need to talk about, we touched on theme, but we didn't pull together a discussion on theme for this one or for the one on South. The first word in the second sentence of number 2, Cadillacs. The rich people's cars. Okay, so I will do one extra video during the course of this week, and you'll be able to check on the summer recordings for it, right? And if you don't see it by the end of the week, you could message to ask, but it should be up by then. It should be up by Friday. Because if we try to finish it now, we'll die. It will be too much. All right, so let's just get through this. Talk about similes, which is the last verse of the poem with the TV set. And then we'll continue. Yeah, my handwriting is confusing in real life too. And the digital pen is not helping, sorry. Okay, do you want me to read back anything to make it clearer? So the second point said the poor and the rich in Puerto Rico. That's the contrast, right? Oh, number 3, the speaker's attitude to Puerto Rico. At first, he sees it as lucky and wealthy. Then he starts to see it as a fence for the US. Because remember, the poem says it's an electric fence, a barbed electric fence. And then finally, he sees it as dangerous. So the speaker's attitude to Puerto Rico is something that is contrasted against itself. Yes, the plus sign means and. Y'all think I should stick to type in? Okay, 1, 2 people do. All right. Yes, guys, today is our last English class. All right. All right. I did, like I said, I thought maybe I would write less if I hand wrote the stuff. Today is our last English class, right? All right, so I'm reading over number 3. The speaker's attitude to Puerto Rico. At first, he sees it as lucky and as wealthy. Then he starts to see it as a fence for the US, as a, like literally a fence, like a backyard fence. And then finally, he sees it as a dangerous place. So that is where the contrast is, his change in attitude to the US, to Puerto Rico, sorry. I don't think his attitude to the US changes, right? He just in general hates it, thinks they're bad. All right, can we do simile? Are we okay with this? No, we don't have class next week. Oh, alas, y'all are so sad. I'm so sad too. Enjoy your little piece of vacation that's left, guys. And we will start back in September. Okay, I think I better put the simile piece into the video that I will do to wrap up the 2 poems, right? Okay, anybody still writing? I need to show you all the flyer. Anybody still writing? Can you take a screenshot? All right, so let me clear the screen and let me show you all the flyer for September. Okay, this is the flyer for September, right? If you can't see anything, let me know. Can I make anything bigger? Yes, but stuff will move out of place. Right? Okay, let me also stop the recording.